Good morning. I'm Richard Bookwalter, President of the California Board of Occupational Therapy. Welcome to our November 15th meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order with roll call. Denise Miller?
Here.
Beata Morcos?
Here.
Richard Bookwalter here. Jeff Farrow, absent. Sharon Pavlovich, absent. And Laura Haith, absent. Unfortunately, we do not have a quorum today. As a result, we are not able to discuss some of the items on today's agenda, and we'll need to move them to the future agenda, to the agenda of future meetings. We will only be able to discuss informational items today, and have been advised that we are not able to work on anything that requires a decision or a vote. So items that will be moved to a future agenda are item number 10, regarding the August 15-16 board meeting minutes. Item number 13, discussion and consideration of Assembly Bill 1592, the Athletic Trainers Bill. We're going to have to move the agenda items for a future meeting and election of officers to future meetings. So that will either happen on in December, at our December meeting, or in our February meeting. Sorry about that. It was unanticipated. It happened before we could change the meeting dates. We will discuss items 7, 8, and 9, and 10, and 11, 12, and 14 on the agenda, which are informational. At this time, I'd like to apologize to Ivan if this was a missed trip, because
No worries, I have to drive downtown to go to work anyway, so this was just my stop before I went into the office.
Yeah, okay, well,
Not a problem.
thank you for joining us, Ivan Altamora, but feel free to stay or leave as you wish.
Yeah, I was going to be here for the athletic trainer bill, so, but thank you, I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, yeah.
All right, have a good
Sorry.
day.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. We have no other members of the public at this meeting today, so we can move on. I have no remarks. We can move from. We're done with item number 7. We'll move to item number 8. President's remarks. I've given the only ones. There's no public comment, which is item number 9. There is a public comment. We do have a public comment for an item not on the agenda.
If I may, to talk
Yeah,
about this.
Heather Martin, please share with us.
So recently there was a licensee who was audited and she needed some assistance. She had her son contact the office. He was fortunate enough to get Jody, and because of his mother's age is one of the reasons he was trying to help her comply with the audit. Jody and this gentleman established a rapport, and when they mentioned that we were going to the OTAC conference and that her 94th birthday was that weekend. And so I had reached out to OTAC, and Heather Kitching basically brought this all together, where they, during their awards ceremony, were able to recognize her. I had shared some information she had prepared for her sorority. She had graduated back in 1947. She was practicing until she was 90 years old. She had such a strong passion for occupational therapy, and as part of her identity and how she actually viewed life. And she was somewhat reluctant to not renew her license, even though her son was trying to help her to not renew some of these memberships and in this license. And so even though her license was expiring at the end of the month, she was waiting until the end of October before she was placing it on retired status. So afterward, because Heather Kitching so kindly worked her into their program, gave her the President's Award, and so this in the packet is just the thank you letter from the son. And I just wanted to share that really nice, heartwarming story that basically all came to fruition because of Jody's sparkling personality.
Aww, good job, Jody.
Wonderful.
So lucky. Good day.
Thank you, Jody. I was there. It was a great event. She thanked all of us gals in occupational therapy, which I thought was great. And she talks about her sisters in this, and it was very nice. It was very, very nice. It was touching. And Heather was called up. Heather Martin was called up as well in recognition for the work of the staff on this. Very, very lovely recognition.
It was nice.
Any other public comments?
Nope.
Thank you. I would read this, but it's a 3-page letter into the record because it would be nice. But I mean,
Oh, yeah,
read
that's
it
a
into
little
the
background.
record, but
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a very nice
She
3-page
had
letter.
a very nice career that was kind of laid out
Yeah,
there.
Yeah. Okay, so now we are going to move into item number 10 is off, just pushed out. Number 11, the Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Update by DCA staff. I believe we have something written in our materials on that.
That was a handout yesterday, yes. It's basically an update from the Department of Consumer Affairs, some change in the leadership team, specifically Kim Kirkmeyer from the executive director from the medical board was appointed director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. She's already started in that position. And so there are also some other executive staff changes that are listed on the bottom of page 1 and top of page 2. Some have happened, some are about to happen. And so I'm sure that this will be one of Kim's priorities, putting together her leadership team. And when she had a farewell event from the medical board for her transitioning to her new position. And it was really nice. It was very touching. And one of the things I said to her was that, I was really appreciative that as the director that she had that board perspective, because oftentimes we have new leadership that have skills in another area. And it's such a learning curve to learn about these boards because they are so unique. And so I think that is great. I'm really excited to see what she's going to do and provide leadership and support to the boards, I'm sure. So I know the agenda indicated that there was going to be some updates on, IT, HR, admin, et cetera. There's really not anything in here, but if you can reference this about a new board member portal. The communications division has something new coming out. DCA, we're listening. And then they mention a future development program. So hopefully once there's some changes in the leadership that we will actually be able to have at the February meeting an update on the different departmental areas, admin, HR, et cetera. So that's just informational.
Thank you very much. Any board comment on this report? Hearing none. We can move on to item number 12, discussion and consideration about the future of license portability. I'd like to start with this, and then Heather and I'd like to ask Heather to chip in wherever. There was a meeting was it last week? Yes, it was just last week in Washington, D.C. AOTA contracted with the Council of State Governments to develop a plan for an OT licensing compact, an interstate licensing compact. Interstate compacts, California has been asked to participate as on this advisory committee as the president of the board and the executive officer of the board were invited to be part of a stakeholders meeting to go over this. It's been happening for a couple of years. They've been working on it at AOTA, and they've established this contract with the Council of State Government, which has done several compacts in the past and operates them. So compacts are agreements between states that are apparently constitutionally mandated or constitutionally allowed for, that allow states to make a contract with each other. For example, the most common one that they use as an example is the driver's license. When you drive your car, you're licensed to drive a car in California using your California license. So when you drive into Nevada or in other states, they recognize your California license. Apparently that's not a federal law or anything. That is an agreement between the states to accept each other's licenses. I imagine marriage licenses and other kinds of licenses are similar. There's quite a few materials here in your packet. I just want to draw your attention to it. There's a PowerPoint. The first thing in the section is a PowerPoint that discusses what is an interstate compact, provides information about that. These are solutions to interstate cooperation that don't involve a federal involvement. So the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is another one. There are a number of interstate compacts. 215, according to this slide that's on the second page, and then there's a map that talks about which states are involved in different compacts. The benefits are efficiencies. They talk about some different benefits. It goes on to discuss that. And then they have some myths here about state sovereignty and some other things. In the terms of occupational licensing, the idea is to allow a licensee in one state to operate in other states that are part of the compact. There's an interesting PowerPoint in the second one narrowing the gap, protecting the public while minimizing licensing burdens, and the anti-regulatory environment. This presentation discussed the movement to reduce the power of state licensing boards and weaken or eliminate licensing between at the state levels to allow for the mobility of practitioners across state lines, or to allow to basically deregulate professions and let the market take on the role of regulation, and that's a sort of a nationwide movement. A compact helps ease some of the objections to licensing, the fact that you've got barriers at every state boundary and everything, without eliminating the consumer protection side of licensing, which is what we're all here for. So that was a very interesting presentation. Do you have anything to add about that, Heather? The next group, and then it continues. Yeah. You're welcome to look at this. There's some documents that are cited on page 15 of the options to enhance licensing portability. Federal Trade. There's some, let's say, the FTC view, the Federal Trade Commission view, which again talks about some of the negative aspects of licensing and how compacts might be able to help with that. There is a map. It's funny because how many presentations are there here and which number it is. Let's see. The second batch of presentations, page 21, has a state map it's a state map that says state participation in health compacts on page 21. And it's a map of the United States. It talks about, it kind of is a little summary of what the current compacts are that are operated through the Council of State Governments. Does everybody have that map in front of them? So on the right, in the lower right corner in very light type, it talks about the Advanced Practice Nursing Compact, Physical Therapy Compact, Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, Nurse Licensure Compact, Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, and EMT Compact. So these are the currently active compacts that are operated by this by the Council of State Governments that they put together. They put together all of these. They also put together Speech, Language, and Pathology Compact, which is not listed here because it's still being worked on. And they are contracted to work on the Occupational Therapy Compact as well. And they're and this shows a map of states involved in the compacts. How many of the states have how many compacts? California has none of these licensure compacts at the moment. So other states have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or all 6. So that's kind of an informative map. But California has currently got none. We participated in this meeting, the stakeholder meeting, and Ohio is another one that doesn't have any compacts. And they also participated. So I think they're trying to get early involvement to see if maybe we can be involved later. Now, each of these compacts will require state legislation to approve. It's basically a contract that's set up. Some lawyers get together, they put it together, they work out the terms of the compact, and then each state legislature has to agree to participate. The early states get to form what the basic contract, the basic compact is, what the language of it is, and the structure, and then later states don't really have the option of making changes in it. So, early participation is important. After the next green sheet, there is a sheet called, it's with the CSG letterhead called OT Compact Advisory Group Meeting Notes, Washington, D.C., October 29 and 30. And this includes what we were talking about at the meeting. These are the notes. They wanted this stakeholder advisory group to suggest certain options. For example, if a compact is created, there is a commission with a commissioner that's a quasi-governmental organization that has a central office, and then there is a board that also governs the compact that's made up of some of the member states, representatives from the member states, board members, board executive directors, and board attorneys typically. Because it's a quasi-governmental organization, they have to be connected and do the same disclosures that we would do as a board, so they have to be board members. There will be a provision for some ex officio members and public members who, as well. The drafting team these lawyers are going to go through and put together some compact language, circulate it, get feedback, circulate it again, get feedback again, the same kind of thing that we do for our regulations. But to create sort of a model language for the compact. There's an executive committee that will be developed. We talked about how long should the board members be on there. If you're a California board member and you're a California representative to the compact, it coincides with your term as a California board member. Once you leave the board, this board, you would no longer be on the compact commission. There may be some ex officio members who have different terms, like a 3-year term they talked about as a potential idea. It's not firm. Another thing is the compact model. For example, the driver's license, it's mutual recognition, where you go across state boundaries and they recognize your California license. The PT, all the other compacts serve, your license is recognized by another state, except for the doctors. They did a different thing. They'd have more of a concierge model. The doctors' compact is simply a way of, it's like an expedited, they're getting a full license in the other state by paying an extra fee to go through the compact and make it easier. And they're not having a license in California that's honored in New York. They're getting an actual other New York license, for example, or an actual Delaware license or wherever they're going, and they pay a hefty fee, $700, I think was the fee for that. That's their model. One of the purposes of our meeting here was to discuss whether the OT stakeholders felt that we should have this mutual recognition model that's also being used by the PTs and the nurses and everything else. And we decided that made sense, so that you could take your license from your home state to the next state, the other compact state, and operate there. So home state license authorizes participation in the compact for practitioners who go to another state. We're going to include both. We decided 10 states. Once you get 10 states to pass the compact into law, then it becomes effective. So you don't start with one state. You start with a group of 10, because that's not really.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How long can you use the license for in a different state based on this?
That is a question that we had too, because there has to be some point at which well, there's a tension between allowing people to come and work in your state, and then if you're establishing a residence in the new state and using your license from the other state, why aren't you getting a license in the
Exactly.
state that you have? So that's one of the questions that they're looking at, and that we have to review. There are some language in some of the other compacts. I don't know what that looks like, so that's an important consideration. Yeah. That's further down. There's a little bit further down where we talk about that briefly. We decided that we'll call it the OT Compact, the Occupational Therapy Compact. The name of it. Universal requirements should the PTs don't include. PT Compact does not include PT assistants, but we won't agree that it should include OT assistants, all OT practitioners. So it would govern both. A lot of OT practice acts are similar to PT practice acts in that, like, some states require a jurisprudence examination and then some don't. We don't require that. California does not require that. So there is language in the PT Compact, like if you're moving from your home state to work in a state that requires a jurisprudence examination, there's some language about how you have to take that jurisprudence examination before they will, in addition to your license. So there can be requirements like that. And some states don't have fingerprinting and background checks, but one of the things is that we felt that all of anybody participating in the compact should have fingerprinting and background checks. So that would be a prerequisite of taking your license to another state and expecting to be able to use it there. Here's where, under universal requirements, the fourth bullet about it is that question that you had, the drafting team to explore an alternative path to licensure for practitioners changing residence between member states. So that's one of the issues that's pushed off into they're looking at options for that. As far as discipline is concerned, practitioners with an encumbered license cannot access the compact. So if you are on probation, you can't participate. You're not eligible to get privileges in another state. Heather brought up a fact that apparently they had never considered, which is great during the meeting. Well, what about someone whose license is denied? They don't have an encumbered license. If you're talking about, if the language says encumbered license, you have an encumbered license, you can't go to another state. What about somebody who's denied in one state and then they go to the other state and try to get in? They're not in the national providers database, apparently, and there has to be a way for them not to come back in, through the back door.
But when they say when you're applying for license that it was denied in a different state, so it automatically would be part of it? Or when you're getting a license, let's say in Utah, and then with the compact you're gonna travel with it, I mean, you would know.
That's what they're going to look into.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
They hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Right, and I think this board has denied the application for licensure of a couple individuals who
Right.
later did go to other states and get a license, an unencumbered license. And so that's sort of what came up, is that, I just mentioned, like, that application should be asking that.
Exactly.
Has your application for licensure been denied?
Did not anywhere else.
Right, yeah, so, I think they're gonna.
Because
look
then
into
you
that.
close the loop.
Mhm.
Okay,
Right,
you can't
right.
just go back
Yep.
and like, oh, okay, I have a compact license, I can practice now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mentioned the fingerprinting and the background checks. Under discipline, the fourth bullet was very interesting. Some of the outstanding issues that we have to look at is the nursing compact was the first. They actually had one nursing compact, and then they decided that they needed to make some changes. So they actually, in order to do that, they had to get rid of the first nursing compact and do a whole different second nursing compact, which is currently in force. And they, at the time they did that, because it was the first one, they're the first ones, they said anybody who has ever had a felony cannot participate cannot get privileges outside the home state. And the discussion, we had a lot of discussion around that because of the other states are having the same issue that they're having legislation like we have, where that the look back period for felonies is shortened. Our ability to look at felony convictions, the felony convictions have to be reviewed for substantially related criteria, certain types of things we can't really address. So there's a nationwide movement to reduce the purview of boards to look at certain crimes, and that's happening across the board. It was very interesting, I thought, and I don't know, Heather, if you want to speak to that. What some of the other states were talking about with that. Maryland, for example, which is in very close proximity to Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and people can easily work in Maryland and live in Maryland and work elsewhere, or vice versa, they can't even get into the background checks, right? Or they couldn't even get into the national FBI database or the
Right.
They were having
Not all states
Yeah.
fingerprint is basically that.
So they're having a lot of trouble, even though they have this law that says you can't ask people about felony convictions. They also didn't have a way around that to find out about them independently. So we're in a little bit better shape than that. One of the ideas was, in the PT Compact, they say we'll allow privileges for somebody who A, has a home state license, and B, hasn't had any convictions in the last 2 years. We've talked, and the rationale for that kind of was, he said 3 years sounded like too much and 1 year sounded like too little, but also, if you're in a 2-year renewal cycle, your home state would presumably not renew your license if you had a conviction, but it wouldn't, if you were licensed 2 years ago, there's a gap between when you got your last license and when you get your privilege, so they would look back 2 years. Does that make sense? So, but it's not in language yet. We haven't seen that language yet. Special provisions for military spouses and for telehealth on the second page. Some other outstanding issues. They need a unique identifying number. Social Security numbers will be in the system. They have to do a big system. The biggest expense of this is to have an interstate compact data management system, so that they can, similar to like our systems within our state, and then also the states have to have some kind of interface with that system. That's a cost too. But there's going to be you get unique identifier. Should they use the national provider information number, like some of the other compacts do? Should they use the NBCOT exam number? Since we're unique in a way that we all, pretty much almost everybody took the NBCOT exam. That makes it easier actually to have this interstate compact because we have sort of a national test that everybody takes. So anyway, they're looking at that. Additional issues. How a therapist in one state, whether a therapist in one state could supervise OTAs in a remote state. Is that something that would be allowed or not allowed, or how would that be governed? The cost and the fee structure. We had a lot of questions about the cost and the fee structure. There may be some money available. NBCOT is putting up some money. AOTA is putting up some money. And apparently there's a military representative there. Apparently the Department of Defense is very interested in this issue, and there may be funds available there. And we were asked to set that money issue aside. We had a lot of questions about it, the economics, but they said set that aside and we'll just work on what the structure should look like and see if we can get some funding for it after we've got the structure going. So that's a future issue. Immunity. We talked about for example, with the board member immunity from having to do with similar to the North Carolina issue with what is our liability? What is a board member liability with this compact system in place? Do you think that's
Mm-hmm.
Am I understanding that? Am I expressing that the right way? There are states that have boards that are combined, OT, PT, speech all together, a bunch of allied health professions all together in one board. We had a representative from Kansas on the stakeholder committee, for example, who's from in that situation, and also Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons Ohio hasn't joined is because it's complicated because of these combined boards. But there are other states that have combined boards have joined compacts, so there's a way to do it, but to include the awareness of that in the compact is important. we talked about using the term OT practitioner to include both OTs and OTAs. The next steps section was calls in November and December, which we had one this week that Heather and I were a little bit of follow-up where we had further discussion about the board terms and a little bit about liability and immunity. We're going to have some more calls and another call in December, another call in January. So there are going to be many calls about this where they get feedback from us and give an opportunity for us to talk with stakeholders, to talk with the commissioner for the nursing compact and the commissioner for the physical therapy compact to ask questions about the nuts and bolts of the compact. There will be a rough draft of a stakeholder feedback plan and communications plan. These lawyers will be drafting some language that we'll be looking at. They did share some language about a couple of issues at the call for the call last week. So, Heather, I'd like to give you an opportunity to.
I think the only thing I would say is from an agenda perspective that this license portability verbiage has been sort of a placeholder, and now that there is something that describes that, and that's this compact effort going forward, there will be a standing agenda item about the OT compact. And I think one of maybe the highlights is that the springboard about why this is so important. They noted that it had to do with technological advancements. Both patients and practitioners are very mobile, and then also there is a shortage of healthcare professionals. So that plus the emphasis for military spouses and the support the Department of Defense wants to give to those families, as well as the use of telehealth, I think are all kind of important to note. And so what we'll do in February is that because of everyone's schedules for these conference calls, they have several calls, I think 3 for November, but only 2 for December. But once they have the calls, then they get notes, and so we'll be giving notes in the agenda items so you guys kind of can see where the progress is, and we should ultimately have this draft compact available that we could share at the May meeting.
What questions do you guys have about this?
I have one question. So when you were listening on a call, are most other OT boards support being part of, like many other, part of nursing and what PT is being part of it? Or the feeling is that it would rather be one for just OTs?
Just OTs. The stakeholder group that is discussing this issue, there was another woman that's would be my counterpart. Then there were some board members, there were some practitioners, there were some academic folks, policies, a few attorneys. So they kind of hit the breadth of stakeholders that are people that are somehow associated with the profession to get folks to weigh in. One of the women was from one of the state attorney general's office, for example. And so I think they're taking a look at all these different perspectives to get ideas to help frame this compact.
Yeah, I think it would be very complicated if it's very many different professions within the same compact.
Yeah, no, all these professions each have their own compact.
In fact, you can go online and look up, just type in PT compact, and there's a website, and it has the commissioner and people involved, and it has the language. You can actually download the model language of the PT compact and read what they have. Same with all the others. So they actually have their own. It's like our website, our board website. It's a whole thing, but and then all the language is there. So it's quite transparent from that perspective. I can't remember how many. We had a previous. One of the meetings they showed how many states were involved. I think there are 20 some states in the nursing compact. So the goal is to get all 50 states involved for them, from the compact perspective. But if you have a critical number of 10, and you gradually build it up to, to increase the mobility throughout of the states. But the more states you have, the more mobility there is. But some states will never be part of the compacts because they maybe have a law that can't be accommodated by the language of the compact. So that's some states are just not going to be able to participate, and they're aware of that. One of the things about the nursing compact, California nursing compact was the first one, and apparently the California Nurses Association opposed participation in the compact. So that's one of the reasons that a bill did not get passed in California for the nursing compact for California to be part of that, and it's kind of and none of the others has gotten through in California either, because we feel we're kind of a unique and perhaps the most highly regulated, although we're not the strictest in some areas. Yeah, we've found, but we have our own structure. The primary selling points appear to be underserved areas, getting therapists to serve the consumer in underserved areas, and being able to bring people in more easily. There are a lot of travelers who use the PT compact. And then military families, as Heather mentioned, it's very burdensome when somebody's transferred every 3 years from Florida to California to North Carolina to Seattle or something. If a military spouse is an occupational therapist or a physical therapist or any licensed professional, are they going to go back to Florida? Should they keep that license? Should they relinquish that license and get a new license in the new state? How many of these licenses are they supposed to maintain? And then what is the lag time for getting the license in the new state once you move? And what impact does that have on the income of your family when you're moving around like that? So that's a big selling point for the compacts. And that's why the military is so interested, because there has been an increase in occupational licensing in the last 20, 30 years. I have nothing. We could talk more, but I think that's enough for today, unless you have further questions about it. Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to item number 14, the Executive Officer's Report. I'd like to hand it off to Heather Martin.
I think if you go past the report and past the first yellow, you can see an updated fund condition. You may recall that based on information we had mid last fiscal year, like March, April of calendar year 19, but that was in last fiscal year, that the board's fund looked like it would need possibly an additional fee increase. And these are the latest numbers, and what you can see is that the revenue is projected to be slightly more than our current expenditures. So there does show an upward tick in the months in reserves. These numbers, though, do not account for a number of things, including the rent increase and the fact that we have some vacancies that will be filled. So although this does look very promising, I think until the positions are filled and until we get the augmentation for the rent, that these numbers should be considered fluid and not necessarily an accurate depiction of the financial future, although I'm certainly not as concerned as I was 7 or 8 months ago.
Heather, do these include the increase in attorney and paralegal
They
fees?
do not.
Okay.
So there are a number of things that will be hitting these numbers. And following that sheet is a table displaying a breakdown of the first 3 months of revenue. I'm a little concerned that of the first 3 months, you can see August came in so much higher than both July and September. So I'm not sure if that's just simply an outlier. So I think we'll have better information in February to actually visually see that, yes, perhaps August of an odd year is a very high birth month, meaning, that many more renewals than the other months. But certainly you can see that.
Is August 2? Is that what that is?
Yes.
2 is August?
Two,
and
yes.
1 is
July.
July, okay. Because
So
it's,
this-
these are the months of the
These are
fiscal year.
Yes, first 3 months of the
Gotcha.
fiscal year. So that number at the bottom, well, I guess it's under the projections, the minus 321. So basically, the first 3 months of revenue were straight lined, and if the average of these 3 months continues, they're estimating at 3.2, and I just think that's a little bit high. So we'll have to see again what we'll have better numbers once we have a few more months. 3 is just too few. So the office move is next on my report. We've had a couple of visits over to the site, and we go Monday for what's called a kickoff meeting, where the contractor is available to talk about some of the, not only the tenant improvements, but some of the change orders that we had requested. After the fact, we have met with individuals to talk about the layout of the cubicles, as well as selecting the color samples for the work surfaces, et cetera, and all the different furniture that will be needed. And good news is, with saving the money those last 3 years, that we will find out soon how much of that will be coming back, because there will be no additional out-of-pocket cost for this move.
What is the address again, Heather? Do you remember?
It's 1610 Arden Way.
Okay.
So it's just slightly over a mile east of where we're currently located, and across from the Arden Fair Mall. And so for individuals staying at either the Doubletree or the Hilton when they're in Sacramento, it will still be convenient. So more
Thanks.
on that. We will have an idea soon when we will actually move. And so it's predicated on having these cubicle systems built and then installed.
Did you just say that we would stay at the Doubletree at future meetings?
I said if you did, it's nearby.
Yeah,
It's
we
past
won't be
that.
doing that. We've stayed there.
I think Denise will be getting an Airbnb.
No, I'll be staying where we're staying right now. No. Yeah,
Well,
Where are you located? I don't even know.
Hilton.
At the Hilton.
Am I allowed to say that?
Denise prefers the Hilton to
Yeah.
the Doubletree.
Yeah, it's just
Well,
subject
Not
to
normal.
availability.
Not normally, just
This one.
Sacramento location.
Maybe it's been renovated, Denise.
Ah, wishful thinking.
And as long as I get a better one.
So, okay, so, Breeze, we have, the board's new logo, anything associated with letters that are in the Breeze, like it takes a request and we get in a queue, and then things are coming out on the, like these, scheduled releases. And then also, what we're trying to do is renaming the applications, because individuals who anticipate an upcoming renewal and the renewal application is not yet open are actually going in and completing the initial application for initial licensure in error, thinking that they're getting quite a bargain, a $50 application fee rather than the typical renewal fee. So we're trying to reduce that, as well as make certain questions required. And we are still, at Sharon's request, I think from the last meeting perhaps, wanting to know about the option of individuals attaching the certificates to the renewal for those that have the capability, rather than just filling in what they completed to support the renewal. So more information on that later. Any questions? I'm just gonna keep going. So the next one has to do with the proposed rulemaking files. And you may recall that in addition to the provisions in AB 2138, which required certain changes, the board had a number of enforcement-related regulatory amendments And then these were all put into one very large package. Given the time frame of the July 1, 2020 effective date of the new provisions, there could be future action on maybe possibly breaking this package apart. And then the number 2 priority on here was actually proposed to be 3 different packages, but there was duplication, and so these have now all been merged into one large package, so that you don't have, for example, one package with a change to 4150 and then another package with a separate change to 4150. They were merged, so now you'll have 4150 with 2 different changes in it. So that one should be submitted soon, and then you may recall that Reza completed for the board the Section 100 change for the free sponsored healthcare events, and that has now since been approved. Let's see, legislation.
Good job getting those out.
Yeah. So there's a legislative update. There were some of the bills that the board was monitoring, and the status here is listing. So, for example, the doctoral programs at the CSU, that was signed into law. Same thing with the music therapy. The I think, in addition to the AB 2138, in the same vein, one of the bills the board opposed having to do with automatic relief for criminal records, which was going to be burdensome to the Department of Justice, that has also since passed. Thank you. Sorry. So anyhow, that's information on that. No, again, no action can happen.
Did anybody have any comments on the letter? I think, if so, let us know for future letters if you have any concerns about it. But it looked good. It looks good to me.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
It's an opportunity for board members to
Share feedback.
share feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next couple of sheets, these are your standard reports, for example, showing, as a reminder, the phrase used in Breeze is applications. Applications are for everything from an address change to sending a verification, as well as an actual application for licensure. So again, here is the information for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. Questions? Okay.
Thank you. That's
Then
good.
on the back side of that
Have
is
that
actual accumulation of the entire last fiscal year, just to give you an idea how many applications are received. So you can see that the board is now at over 2,000 applications per year. I can tell you 14 years ago, it was about 400. So
Yeah.
it's really changed. If no questions, I'll just keep going. So we have the enforcement information for, again, the first 3 months of the fiscal year. You can see there's been so much action on cases at the AG's office that, now we're down to only 17 that are pending there.
We were,
a number of
above,
those.
we were well above 300 last time, weren't we?
Maybe,
Pending and
maybe complaints, but not cases at the AG.
oh, okay.
But then this is going to reduce, because you can
Yeah.
see on the far right where it talks about to be voted on at the meeting yesterday. So that's going to, greatly reduce this when we report the information to you in February.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back page is the listing of individuals who had final decisions go into effect in the same reporting period.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
So the next one, we have citations issued to OTs during the first quarter of the fiscal year. And you can see there were 134 citations issued. 113 and more address changes. But you can still see, if you exclude the address changes, that the PDU violations are still coming in at the highest number. If you don't have any questions, the same information is there on the next page for the OTAs, which was a smaller volume again than the OTs.
And the unlicensed practice is generally people who didn't renew, or
Correct.
typically people who didn't renew in time and timely and
Right.
Yeah.
It could be somebody who did it prior to licensure as well, but generally it's more common that it's somebody who practiced on expired license.
Heather,
Yeah.
question regarding the OTA.
Mhm.
Based on yesterday's cases and hearings and things, it seemed from yesterday's data that there's an uptick in OTA violations.
Yes.
Do you know if that's trending? Do you know if that's on an upward? Do we have a way to see that?
I can look into that and report back in February.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And where I'm going with that question is to see if there's a correlation between the uptick and the opening of all these OTA
Okay.
schools. That's what's behind that question.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is a handout just showing you individuals currently on probation. There are a couple PC-23s that are mentioned, which means individual with a criminal case pending, and the Attorney General represents the board, goes in to the criminal hearing and actually asks for a judge to make an order that the person can't practice, and then it's worded such so that until the criminal matter is closed, and then the board will take action based on the criminal conviction after the criminal matter has been finalized.
we had one of these yesterday.
And then I think we're almost there. Let's see. So then we have data for 2018-19 total year data. So you can see there were 685 complaints were received. Of those, 186 were basically RAPs, either notification of a conviction or of an arrest. And then Jeff has, towards the bottom, where it says decisions, there are the categories listed and the number of cases that fell within that category.
This is great. It's a great summary. Thank you.
Following that is fiscal year 2018-19 data for citations issued to OTs and OTAs. Go back to my report. Let's see here.
Can I go back to the
Yes.
the year-long data? So I see the cease practice orders issued and then lifted.
Yes.
So there are 3 issued and 2 lifted. Can you
So,
talk about those?
So if somebody is still under a cease practice order, that means they haven't met certain requirements. So, for example, they didn't it reached 30 days of negative drug screens, or they were supposed to have a clinical diagnostic evaluation and hasn't done so. So generally, those are lifted once somebody meets certain requirements, and in this case, we've had somebody who's not done that for quite a period of time.
Okay.
But they're not working, so.
Yeah. And then 2 others did comply.
Correct.
They were in compliance,
Right.
so they were lifted.
Mm-hmm. So if they test positive for a banned substance, then usually a cease practice order is issued, not always. So, for example, somebody might have had dental surgery and just didn't let us know in advance. So then they screen positive for hydrocodone, and then the dentist sends us a letter saying this person had this on this date, and for the next 6 days could have the presence of pain relievers in
Gotcha.
their.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I guess lastly, the practice committee, we had some issues with some paperwork. We now have the opportunity to not only reach out to them, send them the paperwork, and then also determine continued interest and the scheduling of meetings, hopefully more than one before the February board meeting. The same thing applies for the ad hoc committee to discuss the OTD and the capstone practice. So those are on here for the future agenda items. There will be a opportunity for these committees to there will be a report for them on the February agenda.
So when do you project the practice committee starting?
Well, first we have to send all the paperwork to, we have to see who's still, if everyone still wants to be on it, and those that do, to return the paperwork first. Then we'll try to coordinate meeting dates.
And Laura's no longer on the practice committee, so how many people are on the practice committee?
I don't have that information right now. It's everyone minus Laura on the list, on the roster.
And minus Ernie, because Ernie said
Minus
he was
Ernie,
not,
yes,
no
he
longer
just mentioned at
interested.
the OTAC
He
conference.
told us that he was not able to participate.
Do we have any estimate, how many, is that 6, is that 4, is that 10?
It was 8, or I
Eight.
think it was 8.
So now it's down to
I can look it up.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have the doctoral committee on my phone right now, but I didn't look up the other one.
And
Let's
the
see.
doctoral committee's outside of the practice committee? That's a separate ad
Yes.
hoc?
It was separate ad hoc that we did. And I can tell you who I've asked to be on it and has agreed, if you're interested.
Except we haven't mentioned their,
But we haven't checked.
vetted their
Yep,
license.
yeah, so she isn't, okay, Heather's not wanting me to do that yet because we haven't made sure that they have unencumbered
So that'll be on
licenses.
February's meeting.
Yes, I've already started the February agenda. There's
Okay.
placeholders for
Oh.
both committee reports.
Yeah,
Both committee reports.
thank you.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I think it's good news that we may be in a better financial position, but then with the fingers crossed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anybody want to have more questions for Heather about that report? Hearing none, we are, what, you want to do suggested items?
Well, just, I mean, yes, I mean, if somebody has something. then-
We could do item 15, which is suggested agenda items for a future meeting, since it's informational.
I'm not sure if anyone has any, but
I think, if Reza thinks it's okay, yeah. Does anybody have an agenda item for a future meeting? Nothing?
I'm thinking.
Oh, you're thinking? Sorry, I didn't allow you to think earlier because I crossed that one off. Now it's back on. If hearing none, we could certainly please share them with me, and we can add, or Heather, or both of us, and we can add them to a future meeting. We were not able to do anything in closed session, so motion to adjourn. Motion carries.
33. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I tried to change my flight to earlier one, but it's sold out.
Oh
to the
dear.
12:55. Whatever time it is.
what about the 2 o'clock at Burbank?
It's sold out. He told me that in the morning.
So you're on the 2:50 to LAX.
Yeah.
The Crocker Museum might have a nice exhibit if you could do.
It's okay. I'll just,
Sorry.
it's okay.